morning to each and every one. Welcome to our online class. But before we are going to start, let me first introduce myself. I'm Miss Crystal Jane Di Carrion, your teacher in political science. Welcome to our fifth week of online learning for the third quarter. Before we are going to start, let me first read to you our objectives this morning. First, explain the rules and functions of the executive department. Second, make an assessment about the performance of the executive department. And lastly, can answer different questions. We will tackle about the lesson 3, the branches of the national government. The government essentially wields three great powers: the power to create laws, the power to implement laws, and the power to interpret the laws. These powers are distributed to the three main branches of the government: the legislative, executive, and the judiciary. It is said that these powers have to be wielded by separate entities to prevent corruption and to enable check and balances. Imagine if all these powers are present in one person or entity, it can lead to the birth of Gollum in the novel Lord of the Rings, who was consumed by the powers of the rings. That persons would be so powerful and the people would be subjected to all these whims and caprices. Therefore, if all powers belong to the same person, this will be prone to abuse. This can be the case of kings and queens. However, this type of government is eventually fading as less and less countries adopt this form. Fortunately, our government, which is a government for the people and by the people, has adopted this type of government where existing major powers of the state are evenly distributed to its branches. Through this setup, each branch can check and monitor each other. This system is particularly described in the Constitution. Looking at this setup of the government in the Philippines, therefore, you can safely conclude that leadership in this country is not only the sole responsibility of the president but of other branches as well. In fact, they exercise the same amount of power. One branch is as powerful as the other. And now, we will tackle about the executive department. The executive is the organ exercising authority in and holding responsibility for the governance of a state. The executive executes and enforces law. In political system, based on the principle of separations of powers, authority is distributed among several branches like executive, legislative, and judicial. An attempt to prevent the concentration of power in the hands of the small group of people. In such a system, the executive does not pass laws, the rule of legislators, or interpret them, or the rule of the judiciary. Instead, the executive enforces the law as written by legislator and interpreted by the judiciary. The executive can be the source of a certain type of law, such as a decree or executive order. Executive bureaucracies are commonly the source of regulations. The President is the head of the state and head of government and functions as the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, as outlined in the Article 7 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. The role of the Philippine President in relation to his or her Article 7, Executive Department, Section 1. The executive power shall be vested in the President of the Philippines. Section 2. No person may be elected President unless he is a natural born citizen of the Philippines, as registered voter, able to read and write, at least 40 years of age on the day of the election, and a resident of the Philippines for at least 10 years immediately preceding such election. Section 3. There shall be a Vice President who shall have the same qualification and term of office and be elected with and in the same manner as the President. He may be removed from office in the same manner as the President. Section 4. The President and the Vice President shall be elected for a term of 6 years. The President shall not be eligible for any re-election. No person who has succeeded as President and has served as such for more than 4 years shall be qualified for election to the same office at any time. No Vice President shall serve for more than 2 consecutive terms. The Supreme Court shall be the sole judge of all contests relating to the election of the President and the Vice President. Section 8. In case of death, permanent disability, removal from the office of resignation of the President, the Vice President shall become the President to serve the unexpired term. In case of death, permanent disability, removal from the office of resignation of both the President and the Vice President. The President of the Senate, in the case of his inability, the Speaker of the House of Representatives shall act as President until the President or the Vice President shall have been elected and qualified. Section 9. Whenever there is a vacancy in the office of the Vice President during the term for which he was elected, the President shall nominate a Vice President from among the members of the Senate and the House of Representatives, who shall assume office upon confirmation by a majority vote of all the members of both houses of the Congress, voting separately. Section 10. The Congress shall, at 10 o'clock in the morning of the third day after the vacancy in the offices of the President and the Vice President occurs, convene in the accordance with its rules without need of a call and within 7 days, enact a law calling for a special election to elect a President and a Vice President, to be held not earlier than 45 days nor later than 60 days from the time of such call. This bill calling such special election shall be deemed certified under paragraph 2, section 26, article 6 of this Constitution, and shall become the law upon its approval on third reading by the Congress. Appropriation for the special election shall be charged against any current appropriation and shall be exempt from the requirements of paragraph 4, section 25, article 6 of this Constitution. This convening of the Congress cannot be suspended nor the special election postponed. No special election shall be called if the vacancy occurs within 18 months before the date of the next presidential election. Section 11. Whenever the President transmits to the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, and until he transmits to them a written declaration to the contrary, such powers and duties shall be discharged by the Vice President as acting President. Section 12. In case of serious illness of the President, the public shall be informed of the state of his health. The members of the Cabinet in charge of national security, of foreign relations, and the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines shall not be denied access to the President during such illness. Section 13. The President, Vice Presidents, and the members of the Cabinet and their deputies of assistance shall not, unless otherwise provided in this Constitution, hold any other office or employment during their tenure. They shall not during said tenure, directly or indirectly, practice any other profession, participate in any business, or be financially interested in any contract with or in any franchise or special privilege granted by the government or any subdivisions, agency, or instrumentally thereof, including government-owned or controlled corporations or their subsidiaries. They shall strictly avoid conflict of interest in the conduct of their office. Rules and powers of the Philippine President. Besides the Constitution, the power of the Philippine President are especially outlined in Executive Order REO number 292 series 1987, also known as the Administrative Code of 1987. The following powers are: power of control over the executive branch. The President of the Philippines has the mandate of control over all the executive departments, bureaus, and offices. This includes restructuring, reconfiguring, and appointments of their respective officials. The Administrative Code also provides the President to be responsible for the above-mentioned offices' strict implementations of law. The next one is the power ordinance power. The President of the Philippines has the power to give executive issuance, which is a means of streamlining the policy and programs of an administration. There are 6 issuances that the President may issue. They are the following as defined in the Administrative Code of 1987. The first one is the Executive Order and the Concept. The second is the Administrative Order and the Concept. The third is the Proclamation Order and the Concept. Fourth, Memorandum, Circulars, and Concept. Fifth, Letter of Instruction. And lastly, General or Special Orders. The third one is the power over aliens. The President of the Philippines has certain powers over non-Filipinos in the Philippines. The powers he may exercise over foreigners in the country are as follows. The Chief Executive may have an alien in the Philippines deported from the country after due process. The President may change the status of the foreigner as prescribed by law from a non-immigrant status to a permanent resident status without necessity of visa. The President may choose to overrule the Board of Commissioners of the Bureau of Immigration before their decision becomes final and executory after 30 days of the issuance of the decisions. The Board of Commissioners of the Bureau of Immigration has jurisdiction over all deportation cases. The President is also mandated by the Administrative Code of 1987 to exercise powers as recognized by generally accepted principles of international law. The fourth one is the powers of eminent domain, escheat land reservation and recovery or ill-gotten wealth. The President of the Philippines has the authority to exercise the power of eminent domain. The power of eminent domains means the state has the power to seize or authorize the seizure of private property for public use with just compensation. There are two constitutional provisions, however, that limit the exercise of such power. The Article 3, Section 9 1 of the Constitution provides that no person shall deprive of his or her life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Furthermore, Article 3, Section 9 2 provides that private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. Once the aforementioned conditions are met, the President may exercise the power of eminent domain, which are as follows. Power of eminent domain. The President shall determine when it is necessary or advantageous to exercise the power of eminent domain in behalf of the national government and direct the Solicitor General, whenever he deems the action advisable, to institute expropriations proceedings in the proper court. Power to direct escheat or revision proceedings. The President shall direct the Solicitor General to institute escheat or revision proceeding over all lands transferred or assigned to persons thus qualified under the Constitution to acquire land. Power to reserve lands of the public and private domain of the government. The President shall have the power to reserve for settlement or public use and for specific public purposes any of the lands of the public domain, the use of which is not otherwise directed by law. The reserved land shall thereafter remain subject to the specific public purpose indicated until otherwise provided by law or proclamation. He shall also have the power to reserve from sale or other disposition and for specific public uses or purposes any land belonging to the private domain of the government or any of the fire's land, the use of which is not otherwise directed by law, and thereafter such land shall be used for the purposes specified by such proclamation until otherwise provided by law. Power of ill-gotten wealth. The President shall direct the Solicitor General to institute proceedings to recover properties unlawfully acquired by public officials or employees from them or from their nominees or transferees within the period fixed in or any extension thereof authorized by the Constitution. The President shall have the authority to recover ill-gotten properties amassed by the leaders and supporters of the previous regime and protect the interests of the people through orders of sequestrations or freezing of assets or accounts. Power of appointment. The President may appoint officials of the Philippine government as provided by the Constitution and laws of the Philippines. Some of these appointments, however, may need the approval of the Committee on Appointments, a committee composed of members from the House of Representatives and the Senate of the Philippines. Power of general supervision over local governments. The President of the Philippines as Chief Executive has the mandate to supervise local governments in the Philippines despite their autonomous status as provided by Republic Act No. 7160, otherwise known as the Local Government Code of 1991. Traditionally, this is done by the Department of Interior and Local Government or DILG, headed by a cabinet secretary, an alter ego of the president. However, our president is not without limits. He or she is checked by the other branches of the government. Take a look at how he or she is being viewed. For the inquiries, you may click the link https://lcms.gaitf.com/ or you may contact 0927-08093 or 0951-3032-796. Thank you for your listening and cooperation. This is Miss Quisel Jane Decarion, your teacher in political science. Once again, good morning everyone.